Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann. I will be the chair of the meeting today. I'm joined on the panel via Zoom with Diane Knight and Bill Moretsky. Here in the North Committee room is the assessor, Jeremy Pohl, and our recording secretary today is Belen Rojo. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute the YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the business assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value, or the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave, and this process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all of the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 9 on the docket today. Ms. Rojo, can you please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Jeremy Wright.
And you affirm the evidence about present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
And you affirm the evidence about present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Are there any preliminary matters to be dealt with respect to the first matter on the list at Unit 101717 Waverly? No?
No, not from our side.
In that case, Mr. Pohl, will you lead us through the report, please?
Sure. File number 224334. Business assessment ID number is 32392. The total annual rental value is $916,980. And that's for the total premise of 55,000 square feet, 55,863 square feet, for a total ARV of $16.41. The base rent or the net rent that we used was $14.08. And to the left of that is the associated occupancy costs, which leads back to the ARV number. Below that indicates that they're owner occupied. All these properties today on the docket are owner occupied. They sometimes report a book rent. In this case here, it's $4.67. That's obviously not an arm's length rent, and it's not looked at. What we looked at in the marketplace is typically what do big box, because there is no marketplace that rents for car dealerships. They're all owner occupied. We looked out into the marketplace. What's the most similar property to these? Car dealership is a big box, steel shell framed, slab on grade, bit more of a show area for your dealership area, showroom for your cars and so forth, and towards the back more of a service center type arrangement. So that's typical throughout the property type class. So and they're all in retail nodes. So we went out to the marketplace and looked what's the closest orange to this apple kind of thing, because we can't compare apples to apples in this case. So through economic substitution, we're using big box stores. They're all in retail environments. They all have a certain land to building ratio that you need, similar to a car dealership. And if the property owners of these properties under appeal here today were to go out into the marketplace, where would they be able to be getting a similar building with similar utility, and what would they have to pay? This is the rents that they would have to pay if they chose not to be more occupied. So that's the rationale. There is some municipal board orders that indicate prior to this part. The last one was Unit 80 that got appealed. I believe there's a early 2000 appeal. But there was some prior to that indicate that this exact rationale was already adopted by the municipal board. So I have presented that today for business assessment appeal and just stating that every agent kind of thing. So from that point, we're looking at this marketplace, and we see from the 20 comparables we have in the marketplace for retail big box stores in similar retail nodes, they have approximately $18 weighted average per square foot. So when we take it back to the $14.08, it seems quite reasonably assessed. So that's.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Questions?
I have no questions today. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
So on these comparables, there's nothing close to the size. So is that why you adjusted the rental value?
I didn't adjust it. It was model driven. Obviously, typically they're not 55,000 square feet. Really what happens in each one of these auto malls, typically there is one tenant that is the main tenant. I guess I wouldn't say quite that way, but the biggest size tenant. Okay. In this case here, this was this property here, but generally speaking, they're between 25,000, 35,000 ish. Typically under 20,000, it's hard to hang on to a dealership because they make you put additions on to keep your brand, to keep your dealership going. And that's what you see throughout the dealerships. They put additions on or they build new.
Could you just pull your microphone closer to you? Every time you turn your head, I think we're losing you a little bit.
And now I shut off my screen.
Oh, sorry.
No, there we go.
You put my on the computer towards you, so when you yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Better?
Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, have you any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Just for some clarification, Mr. Pohl, you used the term retail nodes. Rather than me assuming what that is, can you please define that term?
Anywhere there is a cluster of retail development, meaning some of these are on standalone, comparables are standalone, but most of them are in a retail node or power center, whatever term you want to use. And that's typically what you're looking for, because that's where the economic activity occurs, right? So that's what you're looking here. And if you look for many of these comparables for the property type classes that are here today, they're in strips or clusters or raise it kind of meaning developments. That's just how they're with the city. So
okay, thank you. That helps clarify. I have no further questions, Mr. Navarro.
As you can see by our evidence, we are simply asking for a confirmation.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Moretsky?
No, thank you. No questions.
And I have no questions. Any need for summary? No.
None.
Thank you. Then this matter is concluded. We can move on to the next matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. That's your only matter today?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for attending.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
And if we can move on to number 2, please. Ms. Rojo, I believe that's Mr. Stories.
Yeah, so we're just waiting for him to come back into the room.
Okay.
My system is freezing up quite badly.
I hadn't noticed it here, but,
I'm gonna stop my video.
okay.
So you'll. If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. If you have trouble hearing us, well, I guess if you're not getting through, we'll try to notice from here, but send an email as well and we'll
Yeah.
try
I
to
will.
correct it
Okay,
here.
thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Feel free to stop me anytime in case that happens.
Okay.
I don't like to, hey, you haven't heard anything for 5 minutes and then you gotta go back to where it went. Raise your hand.
Okay, fair enough.
May I swear in our applicant?
Yes, please, Mr. Story,
Yes, sir.
prepare to be affirmed, please.
I am prepared.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Sid Story.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Item 2 on the list, unit 680 at 1717 Waverly. Can you please proceed, Mr. Poole?
Sure. File number is 224022. Address is 680 1717 Waverly. The business ID number is 920. Business name is Crown Toyota. The annual rental value is $757,260. The total area of the property is 43,621 square feet. And we have an overall ARV per square foot of $17.36. Below that is the base rent or net rent, model rent at $14.86, and the occupancy costs associated with that. And of course, gets you back to the ARV. Again, this is owner occupied. Next page is a picture of where it sits. So it is in Waverly West. The next order indicates there was or I should say the board revision order on the next page is the realty order that came from this hearing. I was a part of it. It indicated it was a decrease. I did not have both pages. I didn't have access, for whatever reason, I didn't have access to the second page, but it was based on the order there. It was based on the net operating income presented by the applicant with the 7% cap rate. So,
Sorry, 7%?
7% cap rate. So, with that, it's the exact same comparables that were used throughout the VCD appeal. All VCDs were used with this 28 comparables. So it's the same $18 rate that I presented last appeal, which I'll present every appeal today. So with that,
Sorry, can you repeat that again? Your last sentence?
the comparables that you see on page 4, the comparables 1 through 28 are the same for all the properties here today, for all VCD appeals that we had this cycle. So this was the comp sheet that we were using. So the $18 that I referenced the last appeal will be the same that we'll be referencing going forward. So the realty appeals, these are the same that were presented. So we're presenting the same information for the rent side, which is of course the BA side too, today the same way.
Thank you. Mr. Story, have you any questions?
Yes, I do. Morning, Mr. Toole.
Morning.
So we've gone through the 28 comps were the comps that the city used as an alternative to the way auto dealerships have been valued in the past. Is that correct?
No, the comps are almost identical to the last cycle as well. What we're saying is there are no rents for car dealerships. They're all owner occupied.
Yeah.
So the closest comparable that we could use are these type of big box stores with national chain franchise type tenancies rather than small propriety tenants. And that goes with what the municipal board has already done a number of times throughout the 90s for how they valued it. They essentially said the same thing. So we're just mimicking the same order. And again, those are dated orders. You and I both know that there is a number of appeals waiting to be heard with test cases for these. So we're going to have to retry that out.
Yeah.
But realistically, this is the closest orange to this apple. So. Is that it's kind of a
I
funny
like the analogy. I like the analogy.
economic orange to this apple, like that better?
Yeah. Okay. Hey, those are all my questions right now.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
Yeah, I guess I might have had a little trouble hearing some of what the assessor said there. So just my apologies if I'm making you repeat anything here. The realty order, or sorry, the rent per square foot that you're using there, 1486 base, that's just model driven, correct?
Correct.
So then you had also attached a previous board of revision order. So
Yes.
can you just tell me the purpose of what the reason why you attached this?
Sure. Every hearing's de novo. Everyone knows that. So you can make your decisions based on the information presented today from either agent or assessor. But typically when we go through the order for, if there's a realty appeal on a property, I'll look to the realty appeal, see what the rationale was. And I'll fully disclose it at appeal here today, whether it was for us or against us, or what have you. And then I will review that again. And if it's appropriate, I'll bring the order in, or I always will bring the order in, but I'll bring in the same comparables that were used. So in this case here, the city was, we didn't agree with the decrease. We're presenting the same comparisons that were used for the realty, and just showing the fulsome what happened for that realty decision and the information presented in that hearing, and we're playing it again here today. Now, of course, we don't have to go any further than the rent because that's what BA is. It's essentially rent plus your occupancy costs. So we're bringing in the same comparables that we used, and we're showing them again here today. And to be fulsome, we're including the order as well. And that's why I highlighted that it was decreased. And I apologize. I don't know why the other side of the order didn't show up in this brief, but I already indicated it was based on the net operating income that the appellant asked for with a 7% cap.
Okay, so just to clarify then, those the rent then used is based on the original assessment then?
Yes.
Revised assessment.
Yes. If I would have reviewed it and I would have seen or agreed with whatever order was applied, I would have followed suit. But in this case here, just to highlight, we're following what we feel is the correct value, the correct approach to get to market value. And we have a number of appeals, or we have well over 200 appeals at this point at the municipal. We're waiting to rehear whether we should apply this approach or take a fresh look or whatever comes out of the municipal board. But our position is that this is the appropriate marketplace to be taken from. So if the board makes a different decision here at the board of revision level, we'll respect that. I'll respect that, but I will be fulsome with the order itself. But in this case, I disagreed with it. So I think that it should be confirmed, and then I'll leave it up to the board to do it, apply whatever rationale they'd like to the hearing today.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, with respect to the age of the building, you have the age of all the comps at page 4, but I didn't see the age of the building in your brief.
It would have been on the realty side. I don't have it
Okay.
today. It would have been one of the older on the parcels. Mr. Story might be able to answer this better, but I believe it would have been early or late 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. The other question I have is, you mentioned in response to one of Mr. Story's questions that there were test cases being prepared for the municipal board. Is that test cases with respect to the car dealerships, for want of a better word, or is it with respect to all of the business assessments?
It would affect all the business assessments as well. So we're doing realty for condominium within a condominium. That's first to be heard. Unfortunately, it needed to be rescheduled because it was going to be here this spring, but ownership changed. And now it's going to be delayed to probably late fall, maybe next year. So from that, condominium is going to be heard first, followed by standalone outside of condominium dealership, and then periphery or industrial flavor. Kind of, there's some other ones that aren't quite. They're not residential vehicles; they're more industrial vehicles, off-road vehicles, power sports vehicles, kind of thing.
So three classes of car dealerships?
Exact vehicle dealerships.
Vehicle dealerships.
So, mind you, we might only need to have one test case, and then either parties might have enough rationale from that test case. But if we have to do all three, then it's going to be about a year to complete those. So from that point, we have a number of outstanding appeals from agents and assessor side. Well over 200 appeals now. With this cycle, it's soon to be about pushing 300 appeals. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr. Paul?
The assessor is fading out a lot of times, and
Okay.
I'll try not to eat the mic, but I'll sit a lot closer to it.
Okay, thank you. He was just explaining the municipal board and the process, the number of appeals, and the fact that the test cases may not be heard for a year.
Yeah, basically what we're saying is our position we feel is correct. So if the board makes at the revision at level, makes whatever decision, we'll respect that and we'll show it. But we're continuing forward with our appeal with the test case. And if ultimately our way of valuing it is deemed correct, we'll apply that rationale through from that test case to the rest of the appeals that are being held in abeyance at the municipal board level, and then anything that comes forward at the board of revision. So,
and presumably, if the municipal board decides that another approach is correct, that approach will be applied.
Ultimately, they could take our approach. They can take the agent's approach. They can come up with whatever they feel is correct on their own. We'll have to look at that rationale, and then because it's a test case scenario, the idea is we use that rationale moving forward. All things being equal,
Great, thank you, Mr. Story. Your presentation, please.
Thank you. And we'll submit as evidence the Toyota dealership is on your front cover. This is a property of 43,000 square feet, 43,621. The city has used and suggested it's from modeling 1486 as the assessor's position as market rent, purportedly modeled, meaning it's gathered from questionnaires and whatnot. The assessor, the agent, myself and others, are using $12.50 a square foot because that was a decision made by the Board of Revision earlier this year. Quick first question, Mr. Cole, is 1486 was used, although the median in your comps is 1827. Can you tell us why the median would be 1827? And if you believe that to be the case and that this is an appropriate way to value car dealerships, comparing them with other retail, then why did you not use the 1827?
Mr. Story, I'm not wanting to interrupt, but this is the part of the hearing where you are to be giving your presentation. You did have an opportunity to ask questions. If you want to clarify that, we can go back and I'll let you answer. You ask the question.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Again, I looked for similar size properties that you would need. I looked in retail locations. I would look for newer. You can see the age lease information from the builds, given the build dates. And the reason why we chose those particular properties is because basically every comparable or every subject property that would be under appeal will be relatively within that age group, give or take, or newer, because of the additions that were put on and so forth and the data builds for them. So we're not looking back to really old properties and bringing in those rents. We're trying to stay reasonably tight to what the subject properties are. But as far as the rental information that we have, that is the rental information that I have. I haven't asked for an increase. I haven't explored economies of scale as far as the subject property itself being somewhat bigger than the average VCD. I'm simply saying that if you're going to go out into the marketplace as a car dealership and look to get a building in one of these areas that are similar, that you're going to be paying about $18. So because I haven't asked for an increase doesn't mean that market shouldn't be applied. If you're asking that, why am I not asking for an $18 or $18.27 or $18.83, depending on what three parameters you're using there? That's not really quite what I'm saying. I'm looking at the model. The model produced $14.86. I'm fine with not asking for the increase at this point in time at a board revision level. Once we go to the municipal board, we go through test case scenarios. I'll be doing it more fulsome, and that may be sought at that point for the increase as far as rents. But at this point at the board revision level, I'm fine with what the model, what they're producing, and I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Story, if you can continue with your presentation, please.
Thank you. If we can go to page 2 of our brief, please. Excuse me. You see the original assessment Mr. Paul just explained is 1485, purportedly developed from modeling. Although it's difficult to understand how it can be modeled if there's no data on leases for car dealerships. However, we'll assume it is modeled, but 1485, the Board of Revision agreed that the fair market rent on dealerships for purposes of the realty is $12.50 a square foot. You can see it under reduced assessment. The basis for the 1485 is reflected in Mr. Pohl's summary of comparables. And I presume that, I know Mr. Pohl and I have gone through this many, many times, but I don't know if the board has, so I'll go very quickly. The comparables that the city used, the 28 comparables in their brief that come up to a median of 1827 are purportedly big box retail and other retail. And I just want you to think for a minute, these are being compared to a car dealership, a place that sells cars. The first item on the comparable list is 1301 Keniston. That's Good Life Fitness. It's got nothing to do with selling cars. The number 2 is Staples. We all know Staples and they don't sell cars. Here's one I just found out about and went and visited and was very impressed. And it's called Flying Squirrel. And Flying Squirrel is purportedly the largest trampoline park in the world, according to the manager. But it's a trampoline park on St. James Street, far removed from any car dealerships or any semblance of car dealerships. 1080 Nairn is a Sally Ann thrift shop. Number 5 is Ashley Furniture on the corner of St. James and Ellis. This is a prime retail location with a building that's designed to sell furniture. It has high ceilings, a very attractive store. The next one is Michael's at 840 St. James Street. And you hit Lazy Boy on Ellis, right across the street, kitty corner to where Staples is. Giant Tiger, excuse me, is at 2195 Pembina. We have 5 at 550 Sterling Lion. We're going to them in a moment. Sterling Lion is the factory outlet, the outlet mall. HomeSense, 841 Leela, another market on Leela. Dollarama's at 1596. You can see none of these are anywhere close to a car dealership. They're all retail. Some are big box, some are just assorted retail because they're smaller. Lens Crafters, I'm just going to read them without too much detail. Lens Crafters, Staples, HomeSense, Silver City Cinema, hardly a car dealer. It's got steps for seating. It's not a slanted floor, it's actually steps. Can't be changed over to a car dealership. Sports Check is number 18. Best Buy is number 19. Petland is number 20. Mark's Work Warehouse is 21. Best Buy is 22. Bed Bath and Beyond, Bed and Body, whatever it's called, 600 Empresses is on Empress. And it's Good Life at 610 Regent, 1610 Regent. And those are the comps that the city has suggested. Now, when this was conceived, I didn't necessarily oppose the approach. I thought that we had to come up with an approach. I've been doing these car dealerships since 2003, the McNaught, 2005 for Dilawri and Gauthier. And we've battled this. Jeremy and I have had many hearings on these. And the concept of looking at a retail and an industrial, merging them together based on approximate square footage and utility seemed appropriate. But when it seemed appropriate, in our view, it was appropriate because it should be vehicle storage, or probably vehicle service. Vehicle service is another category, which is pseudo retail, that is more of an industrial finish than a retail high-end retail finish. And our position was that that would be the most appropriate determination of an assessment, is to take a, for example, 50-50 split, that 50% is, we'll call it dirty or back of the house, which is the stuff that the service and parts and collision and things of that nature that are not as high end and as the same quality as the retail portion or as the sales portion. So sales, the showroom, customer lounges, things of that nature are more the retail component. And we suggest that those be at the $15 a square foot, which is in essence supported by the assessor's briefs on the better portion of on the higher finished portion of the dealerships. If you go to page 5, you'll see the $12.50 was used in the retail. We're suggesting $12.50 is appropriate. How would you do it? Well, you might suggest that the retail is $15 a square foot. That's close to what Mr. Poole has calculated, just looking at the entire dealership. And $10 a foot is perhaps appropriate for the vehicle related. And we have that, we have the auto related comps, which have been in my rebuttal. So our position is that it's unrealistic to use big box retailers, Ashley Furnishings, and Cinema City is in Silver City, hardly comparable to a car dealership. All of the large big box, all of the retail, there's very few that the configuration of these buildings in the 28 comps, very few, if any, could be adapted to a car dealership. They just don't exist. So these are not appropriate comps, and they're comps that aren't going to develop a reliable model. Those are my comments, and I suggest $12.50 that assessment be maintained.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Mr. Poole, have you any questions?
Yeah, but just before we start, I just want to make one small correction. You've read through the comparable list, and that's what they are, except for one. And some other agents are getting this wrong too. Comparable number 13, which is 1485 Portage. Now, if you look at 1485 Portage, that's the whole Portage or Pole Park. That's
Right.
just it. But I've given the H005, which is, I guess, the unit number. That is EQ3 before they moved into the mall, into the actual mall. And if you look at the square foot area, 10,373 square feet, that's clearly not the size of the cinema. So it's not the cinema. Cinema would be appropriate. So that's not being included today. So
I'm
from
sorry,
that,
Jeremy, I couldn't hear what you just said at the end after.
it's not, it just, comparable number 13
Right.
is not the cinema. It was EQ3 before they moved. The size of the unit, which is 10,373 square feet, is clearly not the size of the cinema.
Right.
It's quite large. Moving on to questions. If I'm going through your brief, you're relying solely on the order. I don't see any market comparables in your brief at all.
My market comparables are vehicle related,
Right,
which are in my rebuttal.
But for today, what I see in your brief, there are no market comparables.
No,
There's
because
just the
reason why-
order with the rationale applied from the order.
And the reason for the test case is because the city and the assessors and the agents have determined that there's no reliable leases on car dealerships. And that's what brings us to some of these hearings.
All right, thank you. That's
No,
all the
there aren't.
questions.
There aren't fees.
Mr. Moretsky, have you any questions?
Yes, so if you are relying on the order, then, you're using 1250 as your base, ARV per square foot, which would then have been the net square foot, net value per square foot that you had in your realty, brief. That be correct? That be the same? Do you understand my question?
Mr. Markey, you're asking Mr. Paul, aren't you?
No, he's asking a question of you, Mr. Story.
I'm sorry, Mr. Markey. Say it again. You're cutting out a little bit. I apologize.
Okay, my apologies. So the 1250 per square foot that you're using for the rent in this,
It's carried forward from the realty. Correct.
so that's exactly what it was in the realty appeal?
Exactly. Plus, it's the same as it will be in the next three that follow this one. There's 4 hearings today, and they're all at 1250.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, I have no further questions.
Thanks, sir.
Ms. Knight, have you any questions?
I do. So if a car dealership was no longer a car dealership, what could it possibly be?
Is that my question?
Yes.
A used car dealership, that's what they become.
Okay, but if it wasn't anything to do with cars,
Yeah.
what could the land potentially be turned into?
Well, you have buildings that have reasonably good parking because the manufacturers require anywhere from 5 to 8 acres per dealership. So a place like these King's Sportswear on Taylor and Pembina, that's a car dealership that ceased to be a car dealership and sells sporting goods and sporting. That's the type of use. We've had a number that have ceased to be car dealerships and haven't been redeveloped. One is 2023 Pembina Highway, which was vacant since the early 2000s. That was initially Winnipeg Honda. And it's now just being developed into apartment buildings. We have across from University of Winnipeg on Furby Street, we have the former McNaught Motors. They're gone. That's converted to an apartment building. We have.
I'm sorry, Mr. Story, I have to excuse myself for about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll go on
Can we
recess.
have a quick recess? I apologize.
Don't rush.
You're alive.
Thank you. Call this meeting back to order. Thank you for the break. Mr. Story, when we left, you were explaining in response to Ms. Knight's question about the use of car dealerships once they cease being car dealerships. If you could continue, please.
Yes, so I mentioned a couple. We have the big one it's been around so long is Pembina Highway is the original Winnipeg Honda, which moved to Waverly's Auto Mall in 2005. And it's been vacant since 2005. It's now under construction as an apartment block called the Halo. That's one across the street, on Furby and Portage near the University of Winnipeg. Used to be McNaught Motors. They moved in 2005. They moved out to Waverly as well. So that hasn't been a complete auto dealership since then. Has been used from time to time by Gordon McNaught's son to do some used car sales. We have Frontier Subaru that Mr. Patterson bought to get the dealership. It's now become a housing development, a multi-tenant development. And there's one on Pembina Highway, I think it's 1510. It's no longer a car dealership. It was for a while. So what we see is the best opportunity for these properties as an alternate use is used cars. Not, and the other thing too is the city of Winnipeg talks about complete car dealerships. And the industry has trouble with that because it infers that it's got all the different components, sales, service, parts, tire storage, Jiffy Lube, car wash. You have all these variety of items. But hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pose another question. So a car dealership has a one-stop shop for everything you need for a car, where a retail market has a one-stop shop for everything you need for your person. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
So how would a one-stop shop for everything you need for a car and a one-stop shop for everything you need for a person be at different rates of value?
They are different rate because they're different quality of finish. So
Okay.
the car dealership is going to have about 50-50 between the retail.
Oh, because their showroom needs to be
The showroom
fancy,
has to
but
be
the rest is
pristine.
not. Yeah.
It has to be pristine. They have in the new Mercedes dealership on Kenniston, they have a cappuccino bar. It's like going to a spa, waiting for your car. As a matter of fact, they've had weddings in the Mercedes dealership.
So I'm just going to take this a little further. So in a retail mall, maybe 75% is for show and 25% is for storage.
It's more like 60 for they call it back of the house or the dirty part. That would be service and whatnot. And 60-40, but then some of the dealerships, I'm talking about Winnipeg Honda now on McPhillips, and the Toyota store, they've got tire storage as well. So that distorts it a bit. So what we do is we generally look at two different elements. One, we say should be at $10 a square foot. You're going to get my rebuttal shortly. And it shows the vehicle related is $10 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
It shows Mr. Pohl's numbers are somewhere between 18 and 14, 14 something. So that would justify a 50-50 split. And that's the $12.50, $10 for the back of the house and
15 for the front.
for the retail.
Yeah.
Add them together, you come to 12 and a half.
Okay.
And that's been accepted by the Board of Revision on all the dealerships. I do about
All right. Thank you.
20 dealerships.
And I don't have any questions. You mentioned rebuttal. I think it's now on the, it's now in our Sons SharePoint site. Mr. Story, you have rebuttal to present?
Yes, please.
Now, I'll just confirm that everyone has access to it. Ms. Knight, Mr. Moretsky?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Mr. Pohl? Okay, I think we've all got it up. This is the rebuttal evidence common to the specified roll numbers, starting with, well, number 2 on the list. Can you proceed?
Mr. Chair, the arguments are the same in all 4 dealerships we're doing this morning.
Okay.
The quantum is the same. So at your discretion, if you'd like, we can just carry forward the arguments from this case to the next 3.
That makes sense to me. If you make your presentation, we'll ask our questions and explore the rebuttal as much as necessary, and then apply those answers to the following matters on which you appear. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then in my rebuttal, you see it says common to all, and it's the 4 cases we're doing today. If you just flip the page, this is where I thought the city was going with valuations of car dealerships. And that was to use a rate not dissimilar to the vehicle service related, which is one of the categories the city has for classification of properties. And you'll see here that, look in the use side of it, Auto Guard, Auto Repair, Ultimate Auto Service, Fountain Tire, South Glen Motors, Osborne Auto Center, Kenner Auto Service, Match to Market, Auto Collision, Auto Service, Auto Sales. That's these are not used by the department in arriving at a value for assessment purposes. And I believe they should be. I mean, we had a talk jokingly about Flying Squirrel. Flying Squirrel is treated as a comparable with car dealerships, but Fountain Tire isn't. All these auto collisions aren't. You can see the median is $9.28. That would be supported by, this would be more the industrial portion of the building, and $10 a square foot is reasonable in our view. If we flip the page, this goes back to the inappropriate, what we consider to be inappropriate comps. And we'll start by looking at it, and I don't believe that it's representative of the sample of the population of information. In the analysis, there's 28 properties. 13 of them are in Polo Park area. Polo Park area is the hottest retail in the city of Winnipeg. They don't have, the only car dealership is on the east side of Polo Park. It's Capital Lincoln. But it's a disproportionate, these rates are affected by the proximity. The shadow anchored by Polo Park Shopping Center, which has tens of millions of people visit every year. And then the other thing, one might even make an argument that by definition, a big box retail is not 10,000 square feet. And we have 10 on the right-hand side, 10 properties in the comparables that are under 15,000 square feet. Well, if you were going out to build a new dealership, you can't build under 15,000 square feet anymore. So those would not be reasonable comparables. They're not even by definition of big box retailers. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Mr. Pohl, any questions?
Yes, I do. Just confirm on your auto-related comps. All of your comparables are significantly older than the subject properties you're presenting today.
Well, not really. I'm looking at Fountain Tire built in 2018.
1947
start date.
and 19.
Oh, you have the lease date or the age of the building?
The age of the buildings.
I'm
They're
sorry.
significantly poor quality age-wise, and they're significantly poorer quality than the subject properties today.
Yes, but they're obviously functional. That's why
Now,
they lease.
these are not full service dealerships. These are auto repair or related. Significantly different rates. You have a few here that are national chains, but most of these, and I know these because these are the comparables that Mr. Smith presented. Most of these are simply small proprietors. Would you agree with that?
A lot are owner operated.
But they're, owner operated, small proprietors, the leases in place aren't typical for retail nodes, aren't typical for well-maintained newer buildings such as the subject properties here today.
Well, they're older buildings, but that's the nature of it.
And even so, we'll examine you'll examine your 123 Fort, built in 1947.
Yeah.
You're getting $13 for service, which is more industrial related. If you want to look at the dirty and as you're saying for service, that's still at $13.
Yes.
Why would that not be appropriate to be put on the back end, as you say, the service areas of these particular properties, and then use a showroom rent, which would be greater than $18 and an $18 rate? It would still be coming in greater than what you would be presenting.
You're suggesting that the Fountain Tire at 123 Fort would have a retail area that's over $15 a square foot?
No, I'm suggesting, why aren't you taking these rents at $13 around and putting them on the service end of these buildings, if that is your position, and then looking for a higher showroom area similar to the $18 rents that we're presenting for the.
We're using 15. I'm using $15 rent on the retail portion.
Well, you're using $12.50, are you not?
Hang on. It's $15 for the retail, the better quality finish, better cosmetic appearance, and $10 for the back of the house, the dirtier stuff. And that nets out at $12.50, and that seems reasonable. And that's the number we've used, and we've carried it forward.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
Well, I was sort of on the same wavelength as Mr. Pohl. These properties, other than Fountain Tire at $13, none of them seem to have anything that show the two sales your sales properties on Portage Avenue and Waverly. Those are lower rents, but again, much older buildings. And do those auto sales also have the dirty portion, as you call it?
Absolutely. Anybody with service or collision is considered to be back of the house or dirty.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just that you don't parade your customers through the area.
Okay, so then let's go to the auto repairs.
Excuse me, you were talking about two properties. Which two were you talking about?
Well, three, I guess. Three of them say auto sales. So all of those have the repair part as well as the sales portion at the same related value as your one today.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
So you're saying it's a 60-40 split, they're all the same?
50-50.
50-50 split,
Yeah.
they're all the same?
Yeah, at one time, because it's the hearing that we're doing now has a Jiffy Lube inside the dealership. It also has a car wash. So it's got more features. These older, smaller dealerships don't have many features.
Okay.
But
you don't have any that are...
What we're saying to you is the better part, the quality finish, the high ceiling, the cappuccino lounge, the administration and management spaces are $15 a square foot. And the part that the work gets done in are $10 a square foot. And we support that with the auto-rated comps. These auto-related comps, anybody I think would have to agree are more reliable to arrive at a value than the sheet that the assessor has used, where you have a skateboard park, where you have a theater. And the theater it's not a slope floor, it's stadium seating, which is like steps.
Well, so he's already explained to you that wasn't the theater.
No, the theater is in here, is in our comps as well at 7. But the theater isn't there, I think.
I just want to clarify that again. I thought Mr. Pohl said the one that you were saying was the theater was now EQ3.
Just step in. It is EQ3. A theater at Cinema City cannot be 10,000 square feet. It is significantly larger. If you just buy, it's way larger than that. I don't know the exact square footage of it, but it'd be 5 times that easy.
Yeah.
It is not.
I'm just trying to compare your comparables to the auto dealership that you have today. So which one or two of these comparables then would be your best match to what is today? The best 2 or 3 comparables to your property today.
That's a question for Mr. Paul, I think. isn't
No,
it?
that's a question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our
Because the
best comparable-
dealership we have today is 43,000 square feet.
Yes,
So you were saying Mr. Poles had nothing under, mostly under 10, but yours are mostly under 10,000 square feet as well.
okay, we're using Mr. Paul's comparables for our evaluation of the
I'm looking at your auto-related
retail.
comps.
auto-related comps.
On
Which
your
are-
auto-related comps, which 2 or 3 would be your best comparable to today's property at 680, 1717 to
I would
Waverly?
say 1322 Waverly. That's the
Okay.
one, number 20.
Mm-hmm,
The auto-related comps, you've got that page.
mm-hmm.
And the only reason I'm doing this is by age. Fountain Tire at Fort Street is lease start is 2018. No, lease start, not the age of the building. So
So the age of this building is 1990s. So would you make a change in the rental square footage? Because these other buildings are so much older, the Waverly is
No,
72.
where did you? I'm sorry, I don't know where you're. Where did you get your number?
So Mr. Cole entered the verbal information that the Waverly building was built in the late 90s. And you're saying that 1322 Waverly is one of your best comps at 1972, and the one at Fountain Tire at $13. But they're both 1947 and 1972 built. So would you make an adjustment to the square footage rent based on the age comparing to the late 90s?
Not necessarily, because there's
All
other
right.
components that might offset it, i.e.
Okay.
size, access, egress, exposure, proximity.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
I have a question with respect to your comparables in relation to something that you'd said before, that the larger international, newer car dealerships required an acreage to display the cars, to park the cars, and to have the amenities. You recall saying that they needed a larger area for those dealerships?
Yes.
Okay. Of these comps, which of these comps have that additional extra land area for display purposes, the necessary acreage that would make them comparable in like overall square footage to the comp at Unit 6 Crown Toyota, we'll call it? Or do any of them have that?
Well, they have the manufacturers, which are the people who make the cars, who also assign the distributorships
Right.
certain requirements. And one of the requirements when you're planning your dealership, because your dealership goes with the building, is they would like to see 5-acre minimum, and up in a perfect world, 8 acres. And that's for outside parking and storage, and some used car sales perhaps. So those are in the criteria to be able to have a dealership. There's things you have to provide. And rule of thumb, I believe, is 5 acres. Jeremy would know better, but I think it's 5 acres, and ideally they'd like to see 8 acres. And there's one big McNaught property on McPhillips that is much less than that. It's been a battle since 1989. Because
But none of your comps have that 5 to 8 acre land ratio.
well, they may. We don't have the evidence isn't here. We don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. That's all I had. Mr. Pohl, have you any rebuttal?
No, but I will have summation.
Okay, then would you please proceed with your summary?
I will go through my summary as far as the agent's perspective of my opinion, and then I'll go through my own.
Okay.
Typically what we see here for the rebuttal comps, none of these are of age of these subject properties. What you see the subject properties, typically the car dealership builds start from late 90s and early and newer, or there's a significant additions put on which would increase their effective age. So these don't sit stagnant. In order to carry the brands, they have to improve the property, and improving the property isn't just putting up a sign with a new marketing. It's actually physically improving the building for showroom, for design, for such not. So the build up of these properties are greater than what's presented here as far as these significantly older age properties. Again, they don't fit the format of the desirable areas, desirable locations for as far as retail, as you can see from the addresses. And then furthermore, the two sales that you see there are not full service dealerships. They are used car dealerships. Typically what you see in the marketplace that I've investigated is of the old buildings that were full service at one point. Dealership moves, they build a new dealership. There's some interest or remaining interest in the old site because they sell their used vehicles there. What you can't sell, but it's of lesser quality, you can't sell on site on that new franchise site. You would then ship those vehicles over here and you'd be selling it here. So pretty much what you see here is not the appropriate marketplace to be putting on these subject properties that are under appeal here today. You see a significant size that you would need, and you need a certain area as well to keep your inventory on. What we see within the condominium developments is those areas that used to be greater line of building ratios are being reduced because they're putting additions on. And why they're putting additions on is because they have to maintain their by their manufacturers obviously are driving that. But you can develop more economic opportunity on that site because you can service more, you can sell more. And in this case here, as you see from the subject property, it's the biggest one of the group. You can sell and service more. You can make more money generated on that site. It's more desirable based on that. Economies of scale would actually work differently if there would be a marketplace here to rent. There isn't a marketplace here to rent. I want to make that crystal clear. There isn't a marketplace here for full service dealerships. You can bring this in and try and put it across, but it's not appropriate. These small proprietors aren't appropriate. Clearly, I'm hoping the age of the properties, of the location, I'm hoping I made that clear. From that point, we then look on to what is appropriate. And what we feel is appropriate is following the rationale, and we came to it independently, obviously. I look back further than the Unit 90 West appeal, and the board already came to the same conclusion. It was already there. We look out to retail nodes. We look into the marketplace to see what they would develop a site for, what they would actually be paying. And we look to big box stores of a certain size and certain age and date as comparable as we can. Now, getting to the use of what, we're not taking that retail and saying flying squirrel is similar to selling cars. What we're saying is if you want to occupy a building in a retail node, the property owner would need this X amount of rate for you to be here. As you can see from the marketplace that I brought in, it's about $18. As far as those those comparables to the subject properties being a big box store, which is a steel shell building, slab on grade construction, and basically an open space, they're very similar to the subject property as far as they have mezzanine areas for their staff, for their management, washroom areas. In the back, they have minimal loading. Getting to the question of one of the panel members, typically these have very minimal because basically what you're selling in a retail environment doesn't sell if you keep it in a warehouse in the back. They bring it forth. So you empty it off the truck, you load it into the forklift, you put it out on the store. You don't have a 60-40 split. It's basically big open space. And if you go into any of these big box stores, you can kind of get that feel. It's just what it is. It's the nature of the business. So when we're saying that a big box store is the most appropriate, considering there is no marketplace for car dealerships to draw from, it is the most appropriate to line that up with the sale, to line that up with the age of the properties, to line that up with the areas of the properties that they would be located in, with the size of buildings that you would need, and with in the retail nodes that you would need. As you can see from my comparables, we're mimicking it. Keniston there's a retail strip there now, a high demand retail strip of your more luxury vehicles. You look at McPhillips, you have that as well. You look at Regent, you have that as well. You look at Pembina, we have that as well, and Portage, you have that as well. So we're covering all the main areas that you would see for car dealerships to be located on in our comparables. So with that, I feel that the marketplace that we're bringing in at around $18 is pretty much what you'd be paying, give or take, from a Winnipeg standpoint, from a Winnipeg wide standpoint. And when we have a model rented around the $14 ranges that we'll see here today, it's more than appropriate. It's quite conservative, in my opinion. But with that said, that's our position, and we'll wait to see what the board orders.
Thank you. Any summary, Mr. Story?
Yes, just thank you. I just want clarification, make sure the board understands our position. We are looking at car dealerships as having different quality functions and different utility. What do you need space for? If people never go in the back, it would be at a lower rate. The finish would be perhaps less. But the bottom line is that we believe a more appropriate way to value the dealerships is to use the retail portion of the building. In this case, because there's no tire storage or anything, or Jiffy Lubes, it's 50-50. $10 a square foot is an industrial rate. That's supported by the assessor's rate of $9 and change. And the industrial is at $10 a square foot. When you blend them, it's $12.50. It's been supported on all of today's hearings at the Board of Revision. And we respectfully submit that you assign a base rent of $12.50 a square foot on the subject property. Thank you.
Can I just add one? I forgot to mention one point. I apologize. But our evidence deadline for market evidence was obviously the deadline. Through rebuttal, the auto-related comps are being submitted. And those are after the evidence deadline. So I'll let the board make its decision on whether they want to put any weight to it.
We'll consider the weight to put on that evidence. That concludes this matter. We will move to number 3 on the docket, please. That being the Crown Nissan, I believe. Mr. Pohl.
Me here while I catch up. File number 224025. Address is 700 1770 Waverly. The business ID number is 35149. Business name is Crown Nissan. We have an annual rental value of $465,300. Our total area of the premise is 26,477, and an ARV is $17.57. Below that is the base rent that's being used, which is $15.25. And the appropriate occupancy costs are to the right of that. So, which leads back to the ARV when they're summated together. So again, it's owner occupied as they all are today. If we look, the order is on the next page. There was a decrease. And I apologize. I don't know why the second page of the order hasn't been included on these. But generally speaking, the board used for the realty portion of this for the appeal, the board used evidence presented by the assessment taxation department, then adjusted the net operating income and cap rate. So we don't exactly know what the board, why that was the rationale given. So with that, it's the exact same comparables. We have an $18.01 weighted average, median 1827, and an average of 1883. So with that, the $15.25 is appropriate in my mind's eye. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions of Mr.
I'm fine. We're suggesting that some of the evidence can be carried forward, perhaps.
Yes, we'll apply the evidence and the rebuttal evidence from the previous matter to this one as well.
Thank you. Then no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight.
What year was this property built?
2012.
Yeah, you got it answered from the expert.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious about one thing here, just sort of occurred to me near the end of the last item. This is for the assessor, have there been any dealerships in Winnipeg that have been converted to retail?
Older dealerships typically go used car dealership way.
Beyond that, just
Beyond that, like I can't.
or is something else completely unrelated to cars.
One doesn't really particularly come to mind. No, it really, when you look at it though, it doesn't really have any other, in my mind's eye, any other real utility other than selling cars. You can sell used cars, obviously, and that is a secondary market, right? So there is another, but other than the auto-related sales and service as a full service dealership franchise or a used car dealership, there really is another economic opportunity for those property types.
I just
Yeah,
have
for what it's worth, I sort of have a vague recollection of that area in Confusion Corner with the Burger King, the parking lot, and some other play areas in the building there. That was a dealership at one time.
I can only really think of one downtown. I can't remember exact location of it, but it was converted over to but it was addition put onto it that converted over to more office kind of. It was a nonprofit organization that took it over, but realistically, those are the two economic animals that occupy these properties. There's not much more of a use to them other than that. You can say Royal Sports on Pembina, but like you're really grasping, right? So,
Can I ask one further question?
Yes, Ms. Knight.
So the interior, we know that car dealerships like to keep their interior relevant. So this was built in 2012. Was there anything done to the interior to make it better than other dealerships on this one?
no, I think what we get is a portion of the development is size, meaning you have to have a certain size. The newer builds are bigger than the old ones, and if there is an building on site, they put an addition on. That addition on usually is revamped with what's there to accommodate their brand. But generally speaking, you don't have these properties falling into a lower state like you would 1947 to 1980 or whatever the comparables are being.
Right.
For the rebuttal, because your franchise would never allow that. Your manufacturer would never allow your franchise in there to do that. So these buildings are well maintained. These buildings are well kept up, and when you walk into them, there's the showroom areas are definitely built out greater than the comparables that we're actually using as far as big box stores. When you walk into a big box store, you walk through the door, there's glazing similar to a showroom, and then there's the inventory on the floor. There's a mezzanine area usually for your staff, washrooms, management, whatever. And at the back, you see a loading door and a small loading area where they unload what's in place off the truck and move it right out onto the floor, because you don't sell anything if you leave it in the back, so to speak. So here you would have a lesser than build out than you would as far as the showroom dealerships are. So if you're going to have a property owner develop that site for you and rent it out, they're going to need more because their build out is more. Their rate of return has to be greater. What we're saying is these big box stores are pretty minimalistic. And at $18, they're very reasonable as far as what you would expect in an ownership group to pay if they were to take their franchise and get a site developed for them in one of these areas. So that is the bar coming in. If I'm a property owner and I'm going to develop it for a franchise car dealership, I have to build out greater than these existing big box stores. And then in the back, which would be your service area, maybe it's about the same, probably. I'm going to still need a greater rate of return for the frontage that I'm going to have to display out for this.
And when you say that when the wording of dirty area has come up, the dirty area in the dealership area is much cleaner than the dirty area of say Fountain Tire.
Oh yeah, no, like how do you phrase it the right way?
Yeah,
any shop area, you're not building grand pianos back there, right?
Right.
You're servicing vehicles, right? So you're going to have the service element. It's going to be clean. It's going to be maintained. You have to do that for your franchise. There's going to be a bit of storage area for your dealership because they need parts. They need their material to service the vehicles.
Right.
But that is significantly different than if you come up and just show where you sell, where you meet the clients, where you meet the customers, where you have your vehicles on display. That's a much higher grade finish. And that's what you'd be reflective of if you're building these good rent it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Mr. Story, your presentation, please.
Could I ask one more question of the assessor, Mr. Chair?
Yes, feel free.
Since was a bit of a pause there.
Sure.
I'm just looking at the Board of Revision order that you attached here, and comparing to the other one. So this building is only 26,477, and the other one was 43,621. Both car dealerships, yet this one was assessed significantly higher than the bigger one.
Yeah, they would be looking at it. Well, again, they're all model, but they would also be looking at the newer build. It is a newer build. And they would also be looking at the square foot areas where the other one may have applied economies of scale from the model perspective. And this one here is obviously smaller. But for what I'm saying is if I'm looking at it from the economic opportunity that's generated on site for a car dealership, if I can sell more, if I can build more, sell more, service more, I can make more money. That's a more desirable property to rent than another one of these that would be smaller because you simply can't generate the economic opportunity on those smaller sites. But having said that, that's just rationally thinking it through. But we don't have a marketplace to draw from car dealer. It doesn't exist. So what the model's taken is retail rents, retail environment, and they're applying that. So you're seeing a bit of economies of scale in that perspective. I have to look at it independently from the model and look at realistically what do I see. And I see that an $18 rent when I could look at would be minimum. And then I'd be looking for the more developed site, the more economic opportunity that would exist. And I'd have to rationalize that out. And in this case here, the larger site we make more money on, you'd be able to charge a greater rent. So that's the way I would be looking at it. But for as far as appeal purposes today, from a Board of Revision standpoint, I'd just be looking to confirm the model rents that as they're come. I didn't see any necessary change to it. And my rationale that I may apply, I'll wait to the test case scenarios to give a fulsome review of at the municipal board level. Once we get our decisions from that, we can move forward for the appeal that would come back here. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, yeah, no, not really. It's still as you know, it's not really relevant to today's proceedings anyway.
Well, I did answer that it was taken from a market perspective, from a retail market perspective, and it's taken from a size difference where the bigger one would get an economies of scale, where this one's smaller, which would be greater. And
yeah, I know, but you're talking
about this one's new.
The ARB, yeah, but I'm not really talking about that. So, anyways, that's the end of my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Story, your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. If you go to page 3, you'll see the 1250, the rate. That's using the city is using 1525 as a market rent, and we're suggesting 1250. That was adjudicated by the Board of Revision. 1250 was the decision. It's been carried forward in the other 3 hearings we're doing as well at 1250. If you look at the rate, the blended rate that the city is using is 1525. It's quite different than the comps that show 1827, I think it is. So we're suggesting the $15 is the reasonable market rent for the retail portion of the dealership, and the $15 rate is for the for the retail, and $10 for the work area, we'll call it, the service, the collision, the auto body parts, et cetera. And so we're suggesting the $12.50 is a reasonable blended payment to be used as an ARV. That's my position. Thank you.
Mr. Pohl, any questions?
No, same rationale from the other appeal would apply here today. So my questions have been raised and answered.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
Yes, so again, you would be, your base rent of $12.50 would be driven by that board of revision order realty on the first item. Would that be correct?
I think you might be asking me then, Mr. Murky. Were you asking me?
Yes, I am asking.
Yes, it's driven. We're asking that it be confirmed. That $12.50 is the number confirmed by the Board of Revision. On the realty side, we think it should be used on the ARV.
However, the assessor did provide another Board of Revision assessment on this property that was different from the other one.
The decision.
Yes, the decision was different for this property.
Well, not the quantum, just the decision, the wording of the decision. Correct? I don't know if which portion are you suggesting, sir?
Well, the decisions were different in these cases, correct? They're totally different.
The wording is, yeah, not the quantum.
Well, one was using the NOI from the applicant, and this one's using the NOI from the assessor, I believe.
I've got an answer for this.
Just so I can step in and clarify, one was the one we're currently speaking of is using the assessment and taxation department's evidence, and then the board adjusted the net operating income. I don't know if they adjusted the rent or the vacancy or for the realty would be the non-recoverable percentage. I don't know. So we can't come back to whatever rent. We don't know from the rationale from the order, and we don't know what the capitalization rate they used. So ultimately, that order, that value that came from realty, I can't reverse engineer it. There's too many variables. You can't come back.
Yes. So I guess to get back to the applicant, then you do not have previous. Like you have a previous order, realty order here that the assessor has provided, but you have not applied that. You applied the order for the other property, correct?
We use the quantum from the Board of Revision realty of $12.50 as market rate.
Okay, no further questions.
I think we can all do the math with respect to that, and that would be my only comment. We'll look at it in deliberation, but I have no questions on this matter. As I indicated, the rebuttal evidence that you provided on the last matter, Mr. Story, will apply equally to this matter. And so we'll go to the summary. Mr. Pohl, have you any?
Just before you do that, just to be on record, I have no questions either.
I'm sorry, Ms. Knight.
It's okay. I just want it on record.
Yes, my apologies.
That's okay.
Mr. Pohl, summary.
No summary other than I think the panel member hit the point home that I hopefully implied or was implying that there was difference of orders for the realty hearings, and the agent is taking the one order from the one hearing and unilaterally applying it to the rest, which was not the case. So other than that, I have nothing else.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any summary?
No, I'm fine, thank you. I think we've explained our position. The retail versus the industrial quality of finish based on utility, and that comes out to a blended payment of $10 on the industrial component or the dirty side of the business, and $15 on the retail. You blend them, it's $12.50. That's what's been accepted by the Board of Revision, and I would hope it's carried forward to these 4 hearings today. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Then that concludes this matter. We will move on to number 4, the WAM collision and gas performance at 800-1717 Waverly. Mr. Pohl, please.
This would be file number 224035. Business ID number is 34158. WAM collision gas and performance. This is on that site as well. At unit 800-1770 Waverly. We have an annual rental value of $501,000. Total area assessed is 26,356 square feet for a total ARV per square foot of 1901. And of that, 1651 is the base rent or net rent, if you will. And to the right of that are the occupancy costs, which would get back to the annual rental value. It is an owner occupied property. Same rationale that we've followed through with the other appeals would apply today. Comparables are on, same exact comparables are on page 3 of the brief. Page 2 of the brief is the realty order that came with unit 700. This property is on the same realty roll. It's being operated along with a dealership. So what we see here is there is a reduction and it was decreased. And I apologize, I don't know why the second page the orders aren't showing up. It might have been a error on my part or copy paste errors, but it should have been in there. It is in the appellant's brief. Same order that we just spoke to. And the rationale was evidence presented by the assessment taxation department adjusting the net operating income and cap rate. So again, we don't really have a way to get back to and figure out what rent was applied by the board for that hearing. So at that point, I'm open to questions.
Mr. Story, have you any questions?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Knight, questions?
Just the year built, please.
The year built on this one was fairly recent. I would say it would have been about Sid, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this is the new build that they just put in. I believe it was 2019.
2 years ago, correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I have a question with respect to the role. You said this was connected with a dealership.
It is one role, realty role,
Right.
and they have a service, which you see here on one side, on one building, and on the next building they have the dealership. So it's effectively one economic unit. So it's a better way of looking at it.
Is the 26,356 square feet the WAM collision, or is it the WAM collision and the dealership? Okay. And the dealership, okay.
No, not the dealer. There's no dealership component to this. Is just the gas performance and collision.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then the dealership is in a separate building. So
I see. Okay.
just it was on the same realty roll number, so you would have both income streams reviewed on the same.
If that is the case, is there a showroom then with respect to this? This
not
just serves.
Just sir, there would be a small, but they're not selling cars here, so there wouldn't be anything like that.
Okay.
More of how do you phrase it? It's nice, but it's more of
More of a service and collision center.
exactly. But I mean, it's like there's a counter, there's a you sit down, you wait. There is a showroom of sorts, but it's not the size that you would have for actually.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Story, your presentation, please.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Again, just to repeat myself, we have the two components, the retail component, which we're suggesting should be $15 a square foot, not dissimilar to the blended payment used by the assessor, and $10 on the more of the industrial component or the dirty area, and blended together at $12.50, supported by the Board of Revision. We'd like it to carry forward. Thank you.
Mr. Pohl, any questions?
No, I think I covered it in the other two appeals.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
No, I do not have any questions.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one. So some of the buildings we've been looking at are late 90s, 2012, 2019. Do you think that a building a building supporting a business or a business in a building with a newer facility would have a better rate of rental rate. I'm not just talking car dealerships now, I'm talking in general. A building built in 2019 as opposed to a building built in 1990, would the rental rate be a better rate for the 2019 as opposed to the 1990?
That for myself or Mr. Paul?
For you,
Oh, for me.
or for either, wait a minute, we're doing Mr. Poole, correct?
Yeah,
No,
no,
we're
this
doing
is-
Mr. Story. For
Yeah.
Mr. Story, sorry, I'm confused. For Mr. Story, please.
Okay, you're asking,
In general,
is the age, would that?
affect the rental
Likely it would
rate.
demand a higher rent because the world changes. And we get
Mhm.
different building codes and different mechanical and electrical. So I would suggest that it probably would be a higher market rate, yes.
So now when you take that to dealerships, all dealerships of the same, all dealerships should be the same rental rate and don't take into consideration the age of the building with the different codes to build it?
What happens is we deal with comparables as best we can. In a perfect world, we would be making comparable adjustments, i.e. comparing with the appropriate reasons for the
Mhm.
But I would say that for purposes of mass appraisal, which we're really doing, assessment is mass appraisal.
Right.
We have to do comps and we have to do comparables and we have to rely on the comparables to point to the value in the asset. So I would think that that your comments are correct, that they would attract more as if they're new.
Mhm.
And just quality of building and amenities and green and all the different issues that come into play. Buildings, generally speaking, newer buildings are going to command high rates because they got newer technology.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any need of a summary, Mr. Poole?
No, thank you.
Mr. Story, any
I'm-
need for a summary on this matter?
No, I think we're okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, then this matter is concluded and we will move on to item number 5 on the list. That's unit 900 or Winnipeg Honda at 1717 Waverly. Mr. Poole, would you lead us through your presentation, please? Sure.
File number is 224021. It is unit 90, 1770 Waverly. Business ID number is 34095. It's Winnipeg Honda. We have an ARV of $513,480 or $513,480. Total area of 29,076 square feet. The overall ARV is $17.66 a square foot. Below shows that we are using $15.16 a square foot for net rent or base rent, and the appropriate occupancy costs are to the right of that. It is owner occupied, obviously Winnipeg Honda. On the next page is the order. And as you can see here, the order is a little bit clearer. The assessment, and it was ordered to decrease, that the assessed value of the subject property be revised by decreasing the 2022 realty assessment to bring in line with the market value based on the net operating income presented by the assessment and taxation department. And then with a cap of 7%. So it looks like they raised the cap, but kept the NOI and all things included with the NOI the same, which would be the rent inclusive of that. So the same comparables that are used that we've already discussed, $18.01 for the weighted average, $18.83 for the average, and median at $18.27. Again, a nice tight statistical analysis of that. When you see those three parameters about the same, you know you have a good analysis of the populace that you're looking at. If there was a high degree of variance there, it'd be a little bit more questionable. Sometimes it is depending on what the marketplace is, but here we see that the retail environment is pretty uniform for the comparables that we're using. So with that, the $15.16 was already confirmed at the Board of Revision, and I'm open to questions.
Mr. Story, have you any questions of Mr. Poole with respect to this property?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm happy with you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Moretsky?
I do not, thank you.
And I have no questions on this. Mr. Story, your presentation, please.
Yes, you'll see on this, again, we're suggesting 1250 being 10 and 15, 50/50 square footage between the industrial component and the retail component. 1250 is a suggestion supported by the Board of Revision on Realty, and we suggest to be carried forward to this matter. Thank you very much.
Mr. Pohl, have you any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, questions?
I do not, thank you.
Ms. Knight?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the beginning. It was bumping in and out. What did you say, Mr. Story?
Just that we would like to carry forward the 12.
Okay, carry forward. Okay, I couldn't.
That it was certified by, it was the decision of this board, the Board of Revision.
Okay, and what value are you keeping on this?
1250.
Okay,
market
thank
rate.
you.
Thank you, and I have no questions. I will confirm for this matter as well that the rebuttal evidence as provided earlier will carry forward to this. Is there any need for a summary, Mr. Pohl?
No.
Mr. Story, any need for a summary?
No, we're fine, thank you.
Then that concludes this matter, and I believe that's the last matter on which you appear today, Mr. Story.
That is correct.
Am I right about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your time. And maybe what we can do is just take a 5-minute recess before we begin the next series.
Have a good day, Sid.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jeremy. All the best, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Should have asked Mr. Moretsky, Ms. Knight, is 5 minutes enough, or do you need a little more, or is 5 minutes fine?
I'm good.
Can I get 7?
For you, 7.5. Thank you. Call this meeting back to order. Just before we start proceeding, Mr. Assessor has advised me that he has a commitment at noon. If we're not finished, we're going to have to take a lunch recess if that's acceptable with everybody, and like do our best to finish by then. But
yeah, I think we should finish by then. I do have a couple commitments at 1, so
I just so you know, Ayrton, it's pretty straightforward. They'll carry forward the same that we've already heard. So we'll just touch on the order and what happened.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think a lot of the information will carry forward, but there is some here still. So
okay, well, what we'll do is we'll turn to number 6 on the docket. That is Jerry Gordon at 1717 Waverly. And Mr. Pohl, if you would lead us through your...
Sorry, before, what happened to 900 at 1717? That was withdrawn?
Oh, we did it.
We heard that.
Oh, we did. Okay, never mind. Oh, gosh.
That was Wham Collision, wasn't it?
I need to wake up. Okay.
That's okay.
All right.
Wait, I do need to swear in our applicant.
Yes, of course.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Ayrton Neufeld.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Pohl.
Okay, file number 224484. Business assessment ID number is 24148. Address is 520 Unified 20 1770 Waverly. It's Jerry Gordon's small car center, or Jerry Gordon's Mazda. We see that the total annual rental value is $296,520. The total area is 16,134 square feet. The ARV is $18.38. Below is the base ARV or net rent that we applied for the property, which is $15.88. And to the right of that is the occupancy cost, which leads you back to the $296,520. So below is the order that was issued by the Board of Revision for the realty. It confirmed the value. As you can see, the realty brief, the cover page is attached, and the same rents are going to be applied today. So as we go through it, we see that it was $15.88. That's on my page 3 of my brief, or 4 of my brief. Page 5 is the photo of the location of the property, the aerial photo. And page 6 and 7 are just some photos of the property as well. The property was built in 2014. And on the INE indicates, although it doesn't say owner occupied, we know it to be owner occupied. So the rent that you see, or there is no rent in this one, but yeah, it's just the expenses I reported. So with that, on page 10 are the same comparables that we've already discussed multiple times over today, 1 through 28. The average, weighted average and median, approximately $18.01 to $18.83. So it's a nice tight average, as you would expect from a good analysis from populace and rents. From that point, I feel the assessment should be confirmed here today, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Yes, thank you. Earlier there was some discussion about the split with front retail and I guess service center. I would call it industrial. We called that 60-40 or so. You brought just retail rents though today, though, didn't you? There's no nothing that represents service centers or anything.
Yeah, we're not taking it as far as an industrial comparables. We're not taking small used car dealerships or used service centers or things of those nature. We're looking at a realty environment, a realty node for big box stores of national or significant tenancies, similar to what's already been ordered from the municipal board, and the rationale following suit from that. So
would you agree that the back area of these retail properties would be significantly different in size and quality as a garage, like we see in a lot of these properties today?
Are you asking me for this subject property, whether the front is...
I mean, just more or less the asset. I mean, retail isn't going to have the same front and back split as a car dealer, will it?
No, what we're looking at here is simply saying that the retail comparables that we're using are big box stores, typical steel frame buildings, slab on grade, minimalistic construction, and that the subject properties are at least that or greater.
Okay, these are all retail rents. So how important would you say density is in terms of where retail nodes, as you mentioned, and power centers
Density as far as demographics area?
Yeah, like residents in the area and whatnot.
Well, obviously, retail nodes are built up in an area where they can support them. That's why they exist. You don't see retail development in the back of an industrial area.
Okay, thank you. I think that's most. Yeah, I think that's good for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
Sorry, hang on. I stopped my video, but I kept my volume on. Year bill.
I like that. That's nice.
Pardon me?
We just see panel member right now. It's pending. So it's kind of funny on our end.
Oh, okay. I'm not pending. I'm really here.
Okay,
the internet's really weak today for some reason. Anyway, what year is this one built?
I believe I referenced it in the retail. It was 2014.
Thank you.
And Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions on this matter. Mr. Neufeld, your presentation, please.
Thank you. I was listening along earlier. I think a lot of what we touched on was for quality differences between retail and these types of properties was gone over. I will say that I do agree with Mr. Story regarding how this is being treated, how this should be treated, essentially. We've got a front portion that is a bit nicer and a back portion that is essentially industrial. And it can be about 60-40, the split, and usually in most more service. One thing that I did feel wasn't really touched on was the area. Now, this is on Waverly, so it's south end of town. It seems as though it's an affluent area. It is a good area, but there's really no density within the walking distance of these. This is about a 25-minute walk from the keg on McGilvery, which I would sort of say is the sort of beginning of where, density begins. For something like this to go retail, you would need the entire area to go retail all at once for it to work. This right now, if this gets reconverted or converted at all, it's going to go to a low quality office. And that's, I think, is a big difference. That our opinion is based on what the city's doing. This area, it barely has sidewalks on Waverly and Caniston. The bus routes are supportive for office and the university as a throughfare. You're not getting retail traffic here. You're not getting that at all. What we're seeing in our marketplace right now is a lot of our land sales are going very high if you can put an apartment on that and get a dense apartment. And people only really want to do that right now in areas with existing density. You're not really creating density by redeveloping. You create density by taking brand new land, say further down the road on the sugar beets. And by brand new, I mean it's been sitting there as land for a long time. And redeveloping it for that purpose. But that's a huge 10, 15, 20-year project. And this is behind after that. You're not going to see this area be redeveloped away from this until a lot of the areas surrounding it are. So as of right now, if this were to be sold and not continue as a car dealer, I would agree that the best use is used car. But if it wasn't, I would say office. And office is not going to attract high retail rents like you're going to see. If you look at the comps, all of these that the assessor provided, they're on commercial arteries. There's apartments nearby. There's other retail components nearby, not 20 minutes from a suburb. And that's the closest thing to what we're seeing here. I think too, and the approach that using some retail on the front and industrial on the back is not inappropriate. I think we would agree that these are hard to value due to the fact that none of them are rented as car dealers. There's a bit of a difference, but the closest thing, as Mr. Story had said, is car dealers, service centers. Looking at rents, what we're actually requesting, the $12 was, if you go to my page 7 onwards, these are orders from Trevor Smith, similar properties on McPhillips and Regent, where it was applied between 13 and 12. Mr. Story had suggested $12.50 for this area. I think that's reasonable as well. We would have no issue with $12.50 being applied, but we are requesting 12 today. One thing I will mention about these orders that I have presented that are at 12 and 13 is these are in areas that are developed with density. If I'm an investor and I'm offered these both, something on Regent or something on a auto mall in Waverly, I want Regent because then I can flip that and turn it into a dense apartment or high quality retail that supports already existing dense apartments. And that's not something that's really in this immediate area. One other thing too, I mean, we've got rents here that are supplied for Sterling Lion and Polo Park. And if that's what's going into the model, we're using the absolute best retail rents in the city and applying it to a auto mall that's not in a dense, affluent, strong area for rental markets. So I think right in there, that kind of shows the difficulties in the model. We've had multiple municipal board cases with restaurants where they try to take Polo Park rents and apply it to the Exchange or down along Pembina, and some assessors want to see increases with the Polo Park rents, and then you get it to another assessor who reduces it based on actual retail or actual rents in the area. I think there's a bit of it's not necessarily fluent across the department how this would be using rents that are in different areas. I think different assessors have different opinions on it. Like I said, we're mostly focusing on the 12 that was applied at Realty for these other properties, very similar properties. And another reason for that, on my page 24, it's an excerpt from the Winnipeg Charter, the very last page. The one difference between business assessments and realty assessments is we do actually consider what we call equity. If you read section 1716, which is the second highlight of the word business there near the bottom, In determining annual rental value, assessors shall determine annual ARV by a method in such a manner that the ARV is determined by the assessor is fair and in just relation to annual rental values assigned to other assessable properties. So we do have an extra excerpt from this specific app that does essentially let us compare assessments. I think when at the beginning, when that said that it isn't applied, that is more of a realty concept, whereas business, you are looking at assessing businesses similarly across the city, and you do want to look at a little more parity in that respect. I think that's mostly my presentation. I had we had rental or automotive related rents that were actually missed. I did email them, or I had someone email them earlier today. I don't think it's necessarily super important, but because we are relying mostly on those other orders. But Belen, did Bram ever send that?
Yeah, it was received and distributed.
Oh, it was. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just let me find them. So yeah, the rents that were distributed, the ones I really liked.
If I can just stop you for a moment, we'll make sure the board and
I would have to object to that as it was included in the line. You can put whatever weight you will, but I do have some objections with the evidence being presented today.
Sorry, this was just received this morning?
Correct.
Okay. Well, we'll let you go through your presentation with respect to this, and the board will decide the weight to give to it, given that.
Thank you. And just quickly to comment on what the assessor said, there is no evidence exchange for business assessments. The city added a policy when we started doing digital distribution to get them in a day or two earlier, and we strive at our best to do that for them, but the legislation doesn't actually have any sort of mention of evidence exchange, so it is acceptable until the hearing closes, essentially. But I will just quickly go through them. I mean, 13, sorry. Good, okay. 1370 Dugald is it's an RV sale. It is, I would say, area-wise, it does line up quite well with these. It's not quite as good of an area, but it is kind of in the not near retail nodes. It's more in an industrial more area. Other ones I would like to point to are 2554 is the former Mercedes. It's now a used car dealer. It is a bit lower, and that's because of the land. There is less land, so 750. We would the difference would mostly be land and I guess a newer building, but it is a better area for retail, certainly. And then another one, 30, the Boyd Auto Bodies. We have been reliant on in the past, but they aren't. They're month to month for some of them. So you got auto body sales, car sales, and other rents that we've seen previously, such as the piston rings that I think are much more applicable than the retail ones that are being used in the model. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pohl, questions?
Yeah, first, can we please turn to your brief on your page, starting on page 11. Your article here, although you didn't reference it, it is post-reference. Do you not agree that June 2nd, 2022 is post-reference?
No, we're talking about post-reference. We're talking about market data. This is, I mean, I didn't touch on it. You're right, but when it comes to an article, this is just how this. All it is it's using a media way of explaining what we're already kind of saying with car dealers. We didn't touch on it mostly today, but if we're going to go through it, I mean, the automotive industry is changing. It's been changing since 1999 when this is building, and I think that's really just what it says. Speaks to it.
I'd like a point in order. This is from the chair. This is post-reference by almost.
This is post-reference, and we're not going to consider post-reference information.
That's fine. I would just still say that I disagree. That's not necessary. It's not market information necessarily. It's just a kind of a way of explaining. But whatever the chair decides, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is on page 12, and on page 13. It is the excerpt from the Johnson report. It is a 2021. It is June 2021, or they released it in June 2021 to December 2021. Clearly, this is post-reference as well.
No, I mean, this report was, that if you're saying that, then this report that we're providing but to the board is all post-reference as well. This is based on information that was extrapolated before the reference date of April 1st. It was just released in June. All this information was put together prior to the reference date.
And again,
this doesn't really need to be included. We're not talking about vacancy rates here, and that is incorrect what the assessor is asserting.
I'm not going to say that the entire report is post-reference and therefore not to be considered, but because of the relevance concession that you've made, we'll just deal with it that way.
I'd honestly ask that you ignore it then, just because you're right. It's for realty.
Next question would be, maybe I missed it, but I don't think you actually stated what you're seeking. Can you please confirm what you're asking for?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sorry. Page 1, we are looking for $12. Mostly based on equity and other properties that are what was applied for other similar properties. And I did mention to Mr. Story $12.50. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Okay, so you're seeking $233,940 then?
Correct.
Okay, you spoke originally to density and the most likely use of these properties somehow would be converted over to office. Then you went into your opinion on that. Are you aware that that is the first, my knowledge, that anyone's ever suggested that these would be converted to office? And are you relying on any of the office comparables on your page 3 and 4 at that point, if it's the most likely use of the property?
I think, well, the reason I say office, I mean, there's a call center not too far away from here. There isn't retail nearby. You've got industrial properties close by and some sort of office style industrials. I was just, that was more or less to do with the area. When you're talking about car dealers in general, I think retail is appropriate. But I think what we're seeing in our marketplace is if this is something that somebody actually wants, they're going to knock it down. If they keep it as what it is, it's going to be as kind of like just a low quality office, because retail needs other retail to survive. If you have this all turn over, if 12 competing automotive dealers decide all at one day they're going to stop selling cars and that all decide to go into retail, then yeah, retail could work here. But that is not something that could happen within 10, 15, or 20 years. That's
so let's rest on this then, just so we don't waste any time. Are you extinguishing your use of your rent comparables for office, meaning you're no longer relying on that? Or are you principally relying on your office rent as you?
I think we're relying on a lot of them. I think a lot of our retail ones, like yours, are in retail areas, because that's what happens. Office can sort of go wherever the user really wants to. You'll really see some people just turn anything into an office because it works for them. Retail is not up to the owner; it's up to the market and what people want, where people want to buy things. I think we are. I mean, we did bring forward a few of the Giant Tiger rents. I think that in contrast to the big box stores that you are also providing that are on the higher end of the market, they're all also lower.
I'm trying to rest on your office argument. Are you saying we should suggest the $12 that you're asking for based on a hypothetical conversion from this car dealership over to an office?
I think all the rents are appropriate, but I would say that most of my concept of what that is, that if this were to sell, it would be knocked down or continued as a low quality office. And I think, I don't think no one's going to buy this to rent it out as an office. It could be a user that uses it for an office.
We're not talking whether it's going to be knocked down and converted to something else in its existing state as it sits. You're suggesting office.
No, in its existing state as it sits, I suggest automotive related rents.
Okay, you can move forward. You also indicated that retail, just in your explanation now, that retail is appropriate. Would you confirm that, or would you disagree with it?
For the area, no. For the type of property, sure. It's just not, and no one's in the right mind would actually do that at this point in time. And generally, retail would, like, existing in this building, it would be unlikely to see retail in here.
Okay, so next question would be, you're now no longer relying on your small industrial rates?
No, again, I mean, that would be, we're using a blended rate of 12, but the small industrial rates would be applicable to the rear portion if you're going to do a split sort of retail and industrial. And remember, we're all talking about hypothetical values here. Like, I think my main point is that this isn't something that's going to be repurposed, but we have to assess it. So we use
Which one of these comparables on number 5 are in a more retail environment or better way to say it?
St. James and Border are closer to. Border's a little further off, but it is by the airport there in the sort of outskirts of Polo Park. And then you can see I think you had a few rents on down the street at St. James on retail. I mean, your comp 3 at 1250 is 1250 St. James at 1290, and that's right next to my St. James industrial style.
So your St. James would be closer down towards across from the Costco, which would be more industrial.
Yeah. That would be for closer to density than the subject property, really. So.
All right. Moving on to your page 6. I did confirm with Mr. Smith that he allowed this excerpt from your private discussion to be allowed today. So I'm not going to question that, but you're using this to confirm what exactly? That
just where the rents applied already by the Board of Revision on these properties would also be applicable to this property. We did have to appeal ours. There was no change. So
these are for other subject properties in a different condominium development for car.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think any of them are condominiums. They're more or less just regular.
Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, they're not condominium, but these are for the region, McPhillips, the Lawson.
Yes, just while we would contend that they're very close properties, on top of that, in business tax, we deal with equity in order to have the business assessments be similar to other businesses.
Given that, I won't question the auto-related rents, as I'll let the board make its decision on whether it's late, but I will have a summation on that point. So with that, I'm done with questions. Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
So your net rent or base rent of $12 per square foot is based on your comparables you provided and those orders you provided?
I would, yes, more or less. We requested 12 at Realty, and it lined up with the other orders, so we just did it the same. It was, our decision was based more on the orders, but our market evidence is what's really suggesting the 12, and that's the stuff that was missed and sent in mostly today, and the rest.
You put more weight on the orders though.
Well, those orders would have put weight on similar rents. So it depends how you look at it. But I mean, we're looking at market evidence. The orders are more or less why we made that decision.
All right. And you didn't put any weight on the order that was directly for Realty order directly for this property?
We did not, no. We appealed that decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
I just have one question with respect to your page 6, the reproduction of an email by Trevor Smith. The point west that is referred to, that is a economic node of car dealerships as well, is it not?
Yeah, it would be, like the Iceplex near there.
Right, and it's away from density as well, correct?
Yes, and I would argue that the arguments should be applicable there. We are working together in the test cases, so I imagine a lot of that will sort of blend into our arguments at the municipal board.
Right, okay, thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Summary, Mr. Hall.
Just on the one point, as far as whether there's legislation for delivery of the evidence, this board
can set its own rules. The deadline, we complied with it, the appellant missed. The same way as the municipal board. They have their legislation as well, and they can adjust that with board rules as well. There's evidence deadlines for that as well. Even within a hearing, there's amount of times you can deliberate for, you can present information about. They set their own rules associated with that. I don't think the panel here today or the board or revision itself isn't unfair to set its own practice of whatever time, and that we should all comply to that. I think probably make a decision whether the auto-related rent should be included or not.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any need of summary?
Yeah, quickly just to that. I mean, we defer to the legislation. There's nothing in the legislation suggesting that. I think the panel is well within their rights to consider it. And then also too, I mean, we're looking, the assessor's model came out with retail rents all across the city. Some of them in the most affluent areas for retail, including being Sterling Lion and Polo Park. Those are not appropriate whatsoever for a car dealer. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this matter, and we will turn to number 7 on the list. That being the 500 at 1717 Waverly, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo. Is that not the next one?
You might be right.
I just
give you number 8, right?
No, number 7.
7.
Oh, sorry. Haha.
Unit 500.
Gotcha. I'm skipping ahead. I apologize. Okay. File number 224733, unit 500, 1770 Waverly. The business assessment ID number is 39472. This is Maserati and Alfa Romeo of Winnipeg. The high-end luxury car dealership. ARV is 261,420. Total area assessed is 14,340, and overall ARV is $18.23. Below, we see that the base rent or net rent that we have applied is $15.73. And occupancy costs are to the right, which leads us back to the 261,420. This is says no to owner occupied. I believe it is owner occupied. I'll wait for the agent to confirm that. When we go through the order was confirmed for the realty portion of it. We see that on the next page, and of course, with the confirmation would be the rental rates that are applied as well. I'll get to that. Next page is the cover for the brief. I presented it. Again, 500, 1770 Waverly. We see that it is $15.73 on page 3, that the rent that was applied and was confirmed at the board revision level, or the realty appeal for the board revision. So on page 5 is the aerial photograph of the property. Page 6 as well. We start seeing the bill. So on page 8 indicates that it is owner occupied on the income and expense questionnaire. It's checked off is fully owner occupied. As we go forward, there's COVID information as far as the COVID report indicate it was significantly impacted. But again, it's owner occupied. There's no rent. Just book rent if there's anything. And then the same comparables that we listed on page 12, which you've already discussed, which so today I won't get into, or today, so I won't get into now. With that, we already have confirmation that the 1573 is confirmed at the board revision for the realty. It's the same rents, same comparables. And we're asking for it to be confirmed here today. So.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
And Mr. Moretsky?
The order information that you applied here or attached to pages 3 and 4. Was there any more in that? I guess that's was part of the brief, correct?
No, I attached the first page of the order. I guess through all of them today, the second page didn't come through on all the orders. I'm not sure why, but I do believe it states that it was confirmed. So obviously they accepted our rationale in totality, which would.
Okay, but pages 3 and 4 are from your brief though, aren't they?
Oh yeah, no, sorry, maybe I didn't make that clear. Yes, 3 and 4, 5, and the rest of it would be inclusive of the realty brief that I presented. So right all the way down is the same information that they would have seen in the realty briefs. So
okay, thank you for that clarification. So everything in the brief is in here as well.
Yeah, just for the income and expense questionnaire, the COVID report, the comparables, and obviously how we value the property with the income stream.
Right. You didn't use any sales comparisons at all in your
or the business assessment appeal
for the realty you did.
For the realty. I did have a sales package as far as I had a VCD package which included some sales, but I wouldn't have, and it would have included municipal board orders and so forth. But I wouldn't have included any of that today because that wouldn't apply. We're not dealing with sales today.
I guess what I'm after is you put the entire brief from the realty in here or not?
No, I did not. I only put the aspects of the brief that was reliance on the rent. If I were to include all the stuff related to the realty aspect, I can, but I mean, it wouldn't really be relevant to today's hearing because it would only be with rent.
Okay, no further questions.
My question is with respect to the income and expense mailer and the COVID information. The rent on the mailer indicates 25,700 per month. Is that book rent?
Book rent.
Book rent, because this is owner occupied.
Yeah, they check owner occupied. Typically what happens, what I've seen, and I didn't go through company searches. Mm-hmm. Typically there's a common ownership between the owner of the property and the franchise that's in place, but there may be different percentages of it. So there may be other ownerships of the franchisee, but there's generally always an element of common ownership. So it's always a book rent.
So we can't put any weight on the monthly rental per square foot.
I haven't seen a long-term tenanted rent yet.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Mr. Neufeld, your presentation, please.
Thank you. I will just mostly say that everything I kind of said on the last property would carry forward if that's appropriate.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this one here, it's the Alfa Romeo. They sell. There were Suzuki for a bit, and it's kind of jumped around. It's changed badges a few times. They used to sell motorcycles on the top floor. They're not doing that at the time. This building's older, as you can see on my page 2. It has had a little facelift. That's mostly just to update the older aspect of it, but it does have a higher second floor component than the rest of them that we'd see. So I would argue that using 12 across all of them is appropriate because this is not necessarily as good main floor space, even with it being renovated like so. I quickly just to touch on something I was saying earlier. All of the former dealers that Mr. Story had mentioned earlier, one that struck me, the Honda dealership, it went vacant in 2005. That now in 2022 or 17 years later, it finally got to a point where that land was desirable to redevelop that, and that's what I would contend is happening here. We're just about 20 years behind. That's what I would say would be the likely alternate use of this in years to come, is that eventually they'll be knocked down for apartments and new retail. And it's just, there are much better areas in the city to be doing that right now, including by the university or in the denser areas of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pohl, questions?
Generally speaking, the same questions would have been
Will
asked
apply,
last
yes.
time. I'll ask a couple today, or for this particular one. Why would you not be using on your page 2 a reflection of the property as it was redeveloped for an Maserati Alfa Romeo dealership?
We just copied that from older briefs. I would put in a new picture if you like, but I imagine you'd object to that. So You're right. It should be Alfa Romeo. That's fair. I think we were showing the work.
Okay, this site was able to attract, again, a high-end luxury dealership. Yes?
I don't think that really is relevant. The higher-end luxury dealerships are a lot higher risk. What happened is their older dealership didn't really succeed, so they took a risk with something new. There is, you're not selling a lot of Maseratis in the city.
Which would indicate the floor plate and the size of the property, given a higher dealership. Your volume of sales would not be the same as a Ford or Chevy, obviously, or.
I think so, yeah. I think what it speaks to, I mean, you're not going to get a Ford dealership in a smaller one, is what we said earlier. Maserati would have you'd have a lot less inventory.
If I'm allowed to continue on, the showroom aspect, the front half, the better version, whatever, how you want to phrase it today.
Mm-hmm.
That being an Alfa Romeo dealership, Maserati dealership, would that not be a high-end finish?
I mean, I think it'd be comparable to the rest of them. You see, I mean, it's glass and walls. You'll see shinier cars inside, but that's mostly the difference. And potentially some deco, but that's not really, that would be considered chattel, not realty.
All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky, questions?
No questions, but just on page 1, the total rounded there, 207,930.
Yes, that's our request. Sorry, I've been skipping that every time.
Divide by 12, just so you know.
Oh, is that okay? Shoot, I mean, we would be happy with however you wanted to round it. That's the minor difference, but I think we sort of have a different.
Yeah, I just wanted you to get that on the record that we could adjust that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and that's fair, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
No, I do not.
And I don't have any questions. Summary, gentlemen?
No, thank you.
No?
No, thank you. I think it's good.
Then that matter is concluded, and we will move on to number 8 on the list. That being Winnipeg Kia 400, unit 400. Mr. Pohl?
File number is 224496. Again, address is 417 Waverly. The business ID number is 522118. And again, Winnipeg Kia. The total annual rental value, or ARV, is 274,440. We have a total assessed area of 15,290 square feet for an overall ARV of $17.95 a square foot. We look below, it is $15.61 a square foot base rent or net rent. And to the right of that are the occupancy costs that are associated with the ARV. It is owner occupied. On the next page is the realty order that came from this board, and it confirmed the value in whole. So again, the rental value that we're applying today is the same, and that would have been already confirmed. The next pages are parts of the parts that are relevant today for the rental information for the BA from the realty. That is the cover page for the brief. As you see the next page, it is the same rent that we're applying today on page 4 or 3 of the realty brief. They're different page numbers. On page 5 of the brief shows the site from an aerial photograph. On page 6 shows an eyes-on view, again, more of an aerial photograph that we have. And then on page 7 shows the actual frontage from the street. Same comparables that we use are on page 8 that we've talked about today. So with that, I feel a rent at $15.61 is reasonable. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
And Mr. Moretsky?
No questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld, if you can make your presentation, please.
Just again, carrying forward the Moport Bahas logic, I don't think I'll add much. This is the Kia dealer. Their buildings are very similar kind of makeup. I think everything that was said earlier is applicable. Our request is 233,940. I'll remember to say it this time at $12. And is that the right one? Yeah.
You might want to check that.
Yeah, that one's also,
I have a different number.
Yeah, 1 sec. I'm looking at a wrong brief. My mistake. They're all the same name, so I tend to. 219,220 based on 12. This one here, the AC is not, there's no AC in the shop, but that's been applied by the city as well, so there's no disagreement. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Questions?
Same commentary and questions is applied for the other one, so no.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
And I have no questions. Any need for a summary, gentlemen? No? Then we will turn to the last matter on the list, number 9, which is Waverly Mitsubishi, Unit 300. Mr. Pohl, please.
File number is 224700. It's 31770 Waverly. Business assessment ID number is 35873. The annual rental value is 333,540. The total area is 18,748 square feet, and the overall ARV is $17.79 a square foot. We have an applied rent or base rent, net rent, whatever you want to call it, at $15.39. And the associated occupancy costs, again, are to the right of that, which leads you back to the 333,540. It indicates that it is non-owner occupied. That would not be correct. They are owner occupied. Sometimes if they don't check off or not on the brief or on the end, it might come on that, but every car dealership is owner occupied. So on the next page is the realty order. I did not participate in this hearing. It was Jonathan Spacek who was the assessor for the city. But the order itself indicates that there was a reduction, as you indicate, as shown for the realty side. But on the next page, the decision is based on the net operating income presented by the Assessment and Taxation Department with a capitalization rate of 6.75% and an excess land value of $8 per square foot. So in this case here, we have good rationale from the board. The rent rate would have been confirmed, portion of that. So at that point, that's okay. Okay. So at that point, the rent was confirmed by the board for the realty side, and now we're going to present the same information that was presented. And I do agree with it. So on page 5 is the cover page for Jonathan Spacek's brief. Building was built in 2007. As you can see from the aerial photos of the property where it resides within the park, and the photos that you see on page 3 from the frontage. We have $15.39 applied. And we can see on page 9, same comparables were used that we've already discussed today. And then on page 10 is the income expense questionnaire, which again checks off as owner occupied, so we know it to be owner occupied. And then the COVID report would be after that. So again, with that, I feel that the rent that was confirmed already is appropriate with my analysis and the comps that had already been presented, which I Matt, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
No, I do not.
And I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld, your presentation, please.
Thank you. Just quickly, I do want to go over a couple office rents that I do think have some applicability on my page 4. Halfway down, you'll see 1558 Wilson and 1100 Waverly. Now, these properties very similar in size. 1050, 1050, 875, and 11. Aesthetically, they are not as nice. They are converted warehouses, so they don't have the glass that the front would see. And that would attribute to the difference, I would say, between the 12 and the 1050 if you're looking at a converted office. And then really area-wise, those are both Waverly. Wilson is that's got Waverly not visibility. Probably a bit better area wise for converting something like that, or converting retail or office of any case. It's a little more industrial of nature, but you do have Linden Woods right across Waverly. So there is actually some density for retail to use, although it is single family. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at converting it to an office, they would have a lot of the same challenges. Just kind of take an old building and repurpose it to a new use. It more often than not, it has extra costs and challenges to do so. I think that reflects it. And other than that, we are requesting $12 which translates to $269,980. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Have you any questions?
No, same questions and commentary.
Okay, they will apply, as I've said before. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions with respect to this property?
Again, just on the total, that we have the applicant's permission to round the divide cleanly by 12 if necessary.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll take a look at that.
Like all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
Just the 1100 Waverly and 1558 Wilson. What ages are those buildings?
They are older. I would have to guess 80s. I don't have the exact area.
Right.
And you're right. That's fair. That's a fair comment. And that's kind of what I was alluding to with the quality differences.
Okay.
More or less speaking of the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Pohl or Mr. Neufeld, summaries? Not required. Mr. Neufeld?
Just to quickly reiterate, I the model using Polo Park and rents in that nature doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I do believe the my automotive rents were more applicable. And when you're looking at a conversion, like has been suggested with the retail, you have to consider the area. The retail, there's no retail in this area to speak of, no shops. Office is a little easier to put wherever you want. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now heard all the items scheduled and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld, for your presentations and your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.